Hello. Welcome to Reality Stories, where stories do come alive. Please subscribe and share with friends. Now relax and enjoy the story. The sun had just risen over the city, casting a golden glow over the Harris home. The living room was filled with warmth, not just from the light, but from the peace that now lived there. Victor Harris sat on the edge of their bed, staring at a framed ultrasound image. His lips trembled slightly as he whispered, "You're finally here." Grace Harris stepped out of the bathroom, her baby bump wrapped in a light cotton robe, still staring at that skin like it's a piece of art. Victor turned to her with tears in his eyes. "It is art. It's the masterpiece we waited 8 years for." Grace smiled gently. 8 years. I thought it would never happen. They embraced. It wasn't the kind of hug you gave out of habit. It was a kind you gave when you prayed together, cried together, and now survived together. Flashback. 3 years earlier, Dr. Adams had folded her hands and sighed heavily before saying the words that crushed them both. "I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Harris. There's only a slim chance you'll ever conceive naturally." Victor reached for Grace's hand. "We're not giving up." Grace looked away, blinking rapidly. "I know, but how long do we keep hoping?" Victor kissed her hand. "As long as it takes." They tried IVF. They tried adoption, but didn't feel ready. They fasted, prayed, and visited healing ministries. There were days Grace felt like a failure as a woman, and there were nights Victor cried quietly in the bathroom so Grace wouldn't hear. Back to present. Nathan arrived exactly 1 year after a healing crusade. They always called him the Miracle Boy. As Grace rocked the newborn in her arms, she whispered, "We will never let anything happen to you. Never." Victor knelt beside her, placing his hand over Nathan's tiny fingers. "He has my nose, don't you think?" Grace hesitated, just for a second. Yes, he does." Her voice caught slightly, but Victor didn't notice. His eyes were too full of love. Later that night, as they celebrated with family and friends, Victor stood to give a toast. "I named him Nathan because it means gift from God. I will protect this gift with all my heart." Everyone clapped and cheered. Grace smiled to the applause, but her hands were cold. Later that night, Grace lay beside her sleeping husband, staring at the ceiling. Her mind was heavy with a memory she wished she could erase. Flashback. One night. One mistake. 3 months before the crusade, Victor had stormed out after an argument. He had accused Grace of being too bitter, too obsessed with conception. "It's like I don't exist unless I can give you a child." She had cried all evening. Chris Raymond, Victor's old friend, had stopped by to check on her after they crossed paths at a grocery store. One thing led to another. It was one night, one mistake, one that never should have happened. She never told anyone. Not even Chris. Weeks later, when she found out she was pregnant, she convinced herself it was Victor's child. The dates were close enough. She made herself believe it. Now, 13 years later, that lie was a shadow she could no longer ignore. The Harris home had changed. It was bigger now. 2 cars in the driveway, a swimming pool, and a basketball hoop in the backyard. But one thing remained the same. Laughter echoed through the walls. "Nate, come down for breakfast." Victor called from the kitchen, flipping pancakes. Nathan bounded down the stairs, wearing a school uniform and sneakers, headphones around his neck. "Smells like chocolate chip pancakes," he grinned. "Only for champions," Victor said, handing him a plate. Grace walked in moments later, tying her silk robe. Her face lit up when she saw them. "You two are always in sync." "We're boys," Nathan said proudly. "We think with our stomachs." Grace chuckled but noticed something. Nathan now looked almost taller than Victor. His build, his mannerisms. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Victor handed her a cup of coffee. "Did you sleep well?" "I did," she lied. She had been up most of the night, watching Nathan's baby pictures on her phone and comparing them to Victor. Something didn't match. Something hadn't matched in a long time. Later that day, Victor and Nathan were shooting hoops in the backyard. "Your jump shot's getting better," Victor said, bouncing the ball back. "I might join the school team this term," Nathan replied, panting. Coach says I'm aggressive in a good way. Victor smiled. Proud of you, son. Nathan walked over and hugged him. Thanks, Dad. You're the best. Victor ruffled his hair. Let's take a break. They sat on the edge of the patio, sipping water. Victor stared out thoughtfully and said, By the way, your school sent a note home. Nathan raised an eyebrow. What kind of note? Routine health stuff. They're offering free genetic screening next month, just to check for stuff like diabetes, sickle cell, that kind of thing. Oh, cool. Victor nodded. I was thinking we could do the full health DNA profile too. You know, get a full picture for future. Nathan shrugged. Sure, if you want. Doesn't bother me. Victor smiled. Great. I'll book it tomorrow. Grace, who had been watering flowers nearby, froze. That night, Grace stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing a plate harder than necessary. Victor walked in. You okay? She forced a smile. Yes, just thinking. He leaned against the fridge. About? She hesitated. The test. Is it necessary? Victor looked surprised. Well, it's just a health profile. Nothing serious. Still, Nathan's healthy. He's barely had a cold in years. Victor tilted his head. Grace, is something wrong? No, she said quickly. It's just, you know how some things can bring up unexpected issues. Victor chuckled. It's not like we're looking for a secret twin or hidden relatives. Just health stuff. You worry too much. She forced another smile and turned away. Maybe you're right. But in her heart, panic had begun to spread like fire in a dry forest. Later that night, Grace sat alone in the living room. The lights dimmed. Rita, her cousin, had come to spend the night after returning from a work trip. They sat across from each other, sipping tea. Rita watched her quietly. You look like someone carrying a bag of wet cement. Grace blinked. That obvious? Rita nodded. Talk to me. Grace hesitated, then whispered, Victor wants to do a DNA test. For health. But you know it might reveal everything. Rita's eyes widened. After all these years? I don't know what to do. You swore it was his child. I believed it. I told myself the timing worked. But every year, Nathan looks less like Victor and more like Chris, Rita finished. Grace looked away, tears forming. I never even told Chris. Rita stood up and walked to her. You need to come clean, Grace. Before this test forces the truth out of you, I'll lose everything. You might lose more if you wait. Victor, standing at the top of the stairs, overheard none of this. But something inside him told him that this health test was about to change their lives forever. The waiting room at Metro Gene Diagnostics was bright, modern, and cold. Victor, Grace, and Nathan sat side by side, the air between them thick with unspoken tension. Nathan scrolled on his phone, earbuds in. Victor was filling out a consent form. Grace stared at the large DNA strand poster on the wall, biting her lip. So, Nathan asked, taking one earbud out, how long will this test take? Victor smiled. They'll take your sample today. Results should be out in 2 or 3 weeks. Nathan shrugged. Cool. Easy. Grace forced a small laugh. You sure you want to do this, Vic? Victor looked up. What do you mean? I just think maybe it's unnecessary. Nathan's healthy. You said it yourself. Victor leaned back. I know, but this isn't just about now. This is about the future. Diabetes, cancer risk, blood disorders, these tests catch things early. Grace lowered her voice. Still, it's DNA. It could bring up things we didn't plan for. Victor narrowed his eyes slightly. What are you saying? Nothing, she said quickly. I just think we should pray about it some more. Nathan rolled his eyes. Mom, it's just a test. We're not trying to solve a murder mystery. Victor chuckled. Exactly. Before Grace could speak again, a nurse walked in. Nathan Harris? Nathan stood. That's me. Come this way, please. Victor gave him a thumbs up. Grace tried to smile, but her face was pale. As soon as Nathan disappeared down the hallway, Victor turned to her. What's really going on, Grace? Grace sighed, avoiding his eyes. I just don't like hospitals, that's all. Victor watched her for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but you're acting strange. 3 days later, at home, Victor was reading on the patio when Grace joined him with 2 mugs of tea. Any word from the lab? She asked casually. Not yet. They said 10 working days. Maybe we should cancel it, she said suddenly. Victor blinked. What? It's already done. I know, but I read that some of these tests mess with people's peace. Sometimes they find weird things that destroy families. Victor frowned. Grace, this isn't one of those who's the father? TV shows. It's a basic health screen. But it still compares DNA, doesn't it? She asked, voice tightening. Yes. So? Grace hesitated. Nothing. Victor put down his book. Grace, what is it? You've been nervous since we left the hospital. Are you hiding something? No, she said too quickly. Then softer, I'm just scared. That's all. Victor got up and kissed her forehead. There's nothing to be scared of. We're just being proactive. For Nathan, Grace nodded but looked away. Inside, her heart was beating so loud she could barely breathe. 2 weeks later, Victor received a call from Metro Gene. Hello, Mr. Harris. We're calling about your son's DNA health panel. There's been a slight delay. The final report will be ready by Monday. Victor sighed. All right, no problem. Thank you. Grace, who had overheard the call from the dining room, gripped the edge of the table tightly. She had one more weekend before the truth arrived, and it felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. Monday morning, Victor arrived at the diagnostic center alone. He had told Grace to rest at home. He sensed she was under stress, and part of him didn't want to feed into it. Mr. Harris, the receptionist, greeted him. The results are ready. Please go to room 4. Dr. Linda will meet you there. Victor nodded and walked in. Dr. Linda Brown was a calm, elegant woman in her 40s, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. She smiled politely. Good morning, Mr. Harris. Morning, doctor. She held a folder in her hand. Are you ready for the results? Victor, Saturday, sure. Let's hear it. Linda opened the file. First, the good news. Nathan is a very healthy boy. No signs of genetic diseases. No major red flags. Victor smiled. That's a relief. Linda cleared her throat. However, Victor's smile faded. There was a discrepancy in the paternal markers. I don't understand, he said. She turned the file toward him. Nathan's DNA does not match yours. Genetically, he is not your biological son. Victor stared at the paper. He blinked, then laughed lightly. Wait, that can't be right. There must be a mistake. I thought that too, she said gently. We ran the test 3 times. The results were consistent. Victor sat still for a moment. Then he reached for his phone. Maybe they switched the samples. Linda shook her head. We follow strict protocol. The name, date, barcode, all match. There's no error. His hands trembled. But I was there when he was born. I saw him come out. He's mine. There's no way. Linda softened her voice. Biologically, he's not. But that doesn't erase what he means to you. Victor couldn't speak. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Outside the clinic, Victor sat in his car, the report still open on the passenger seat. He stared at nothing for a long time. 13 years, he whispered. 13 years. His mind raced. Every school recital, every bedtime story, every hug, every scraped knee, every moment came crashing into him like waves. Suddenly, he slammed the steering wheel. No, it's not possible. He pulled out his phone and dialed Grace. She picked up. Hey, honey, are you okay? There was a long pause. Victor? She asked again. He said nothing. Did you get the results? I'm coming home, he said, voice empty. Then he ended the call. Back at home, Grace stood at the living room window, waiting. When Victor walked in, he didn't speak. He placed the file gently on the coffee table and sat down. Grace stared at it, then at him. Her throat tightened. He looked at her, eyes red. Do you want to tell me something? She froze. Victor, Don't lie to me, he said, voice shaking. Please. I deserve the truth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I never meant for it to happen. So it's true, he said, closing his eyes. It's true. Grace fell to her knees. It was one night. I was hurt. You had left after that fight. Chris came by. I was angry. I was weak. Chris, Victor said in disbelief. Chris Raymond? My best friend. I didn't plan it. I swear. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought it was yours. I prayed it was yours. The dates were close. You let me name him, Victor said, staring at her. You stood beside me in church. You let me fast for him. You let me cry for him. I thought the truth would destroy us. Victor stood up slowly. And now... She crawled toward him, holding his leg. I'm sorry, Victor. I swear I am. He looked down at her, eyes hollow. You didn't just lie to me. You stole from me. You stole my right to know, my right to choose. I was scared. So you let me build my life on a lie. He walked out of the room. Grace broke down, sobbing into the carpet. Later that night, Victor sat in Nathan's room while he slept. He watched his chest rise and fall. He remembered the first time Nathan called him Daddy. His first step, the day he taught him how to ride a bike. This was still his son, his boy. But something inside Victor had shattered beyond repair. He looked at Nathan and whispered, You didn't ask for this, and I still love you, but I don't know how to love her anymore. The house felt too quiet. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to echo louder than usual. Victor sat alone in the dining room. The DNA test folder lay unopened on the table. Not because he hadn't read it. He had, more times than he could count. But seeing the words in black and white made everything too real. He heard Grace's footsteps approaching. Victor, she said softly. He didn't look up. Yes. You've barely spoken to me in 2 days. I've had a lot on my mind. Grace sat across from him. We can go for counseling. Talk to Pastor Caleb. We can fix this. Victor looked at her, eyes tired. Tell me again, Grace. Who is Nathan's father? Grace swallowed hard. You are... Victor tilted his head. Grace, you raised him. You fed him. You stayed up with him when he was sick. You prayed for him. That makes you his father. Victor's voice grew firmer. You know that's not what I'm asking. She looked down. I don't know what you want me to say. I want the truth. Grace hesitated, then shook her head. There's no one else. I swear it. Victor stood up slowly, pain etched across his face. Even now, after everything, you still want to lie? I'm not lying. He stared at her for a long moment, then walked away. Later that afternoon, Rita arrived at the Harris home, holding a tray of fruit and snacks. She had promised a visit since returning from Abuja. Grace looked drained, her eyes puffy from crying. Rita, Grace muttered, letting her in. You look like a ghost, Rita said, setting the tray on the table. What's going on? Grace sank into the couch. Victor found out. Rita froze. The DNA test? Grace nodded. What did he say? Nothing at first. Then he asked me who the real father is. And I told him he was. Rita's eyes widened. Grace, what was I supposed to do? Grace snapped. Tell him the truth and lose everything? You already lost in the moment that result came in, Rita said sharply. Lying now is just making it worse. Grace's voice cracked. I'm scared. I know, but you can't lie your way out of this one. If you don't come clean, it's going to get even uglier. Grace covered her face with her hands. I wish I could go back. I wish that night never happened. Flashback. 13 years ago. It was raining hard the night Victor and Grace had their worst fight. You don't understand how this feels. Grace had screamed. Month after month. Failure after failure. Do you know what it's like to feel broken inside? Victor had replied coldly. I'm tired, Grace, of walking on eggshells. Of being your emotional punching bag. He left that night. No word. No calls. Grace cried herself to sleep. The next evening, Chris Raymond, Victor's best man and oldest friend, showed up unannounced. He said he heard they had argued and came to check on her. He stayed. One glass of wine led to two. Then came the hug. Then the mistake. They both knew it shouldn't have happened. Chris left the next morning, without a word. Grace never told a soul. Back in the present, Rita took Grace's hand. You need to confess, Grace. You owe Victor the truth, and you owe it to Nathan. Grace's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't think he'll ever forgive me. Rita's voice softened. Maybe not, but at least he'll know you respected him enough to tell him the truth yourself. Grace stared at the floor, trembling. I don't even know how to begin. That Sunday morning, the church was quiet and serene. Birds chirped in the background as the sun poured through the windows of the pastor's office. Victor sat on a small leather couch, arms crossed, face blank. Pastor Caleb adjusted his glasses and looked between the couple. Victor called me last night, said there was something serious going on. Grace nodded, eyes lowered. Yes, there is. Caleb turned to Victor. Do you want to speak first? Victor shook his head. She has something to say. The room grew still. Grace opened her mouth, then closed it again. She could hear her heart pounding in her chest. I've lied, she finally said. For years. Caleb leaned forward. About what? Grace took a deep breath. Nathan, he's not Victor's biological child. Caleb's eyes widened. What? I made a mistake. A terrible one. Years ago, after a fight with Victor, I slept with someone else. Victor's jaw clenched. Pastor Caleb looked stunned. Who? Grace hesitated, then whispered, Chris Raymond. Silence. Dead, heavy silence. The Chris who stood beside us on our wedding day? Victor said, his voice cold. Yes. Pastor Caleb sat back, clearly shaken. Does Chris know? No, Grace said. He never knew. I never told him. Victor stood. You watched me raise him, love him, call him my son. You watched me take him to church, teach him to pray, all while knowing the truth. I didn't know for sure at first, Grace pleaded. I thought he might be yours. The dates were close. I prayed it was yours. But when he started to look like Chris? Victor asked, choking slightly. When people started to say it, when I fasted and cried for that boy, begging God to keep him safe, what did you feel then? Grace wept. Guilt, shame, everything. Victor looked at Pastor Caleb. Do you see why I can't stay in this? Pastor Caleb nodded slowly. This is heavy, very heavy. I don't hate Nathan, Victor added. He's my son in every way that matters. But I don't know who this woman is anymore. Grace reached out. Victor, please. But he pulled away. I need space, he said quietly. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the office. Grace collapsed into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Pastor Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. Truth is always the right thing, he said gently. But it doesn't always come without pain. Outside the church, Victor stood by his car, staring at the sky. His heart was broken, his faith shaken, his marriage shattered. But one thing was clear in his mind. He had been living in a lie, and the woman he loved the most was the one who had written the script. The house felt colder now. The family portraits still hung on the wall, but they no longer brought joy. The warmth that used to fill the Harris home had been replaced with silence, and tension thick enough to choke on. Victor packed his clothes slowly into a black duffel bag. Grace sat on the edge of the bed, her face pale and eyes swollen from crying. Where will you go? She asked quietly. Victor zipped the bag without answering. I know you're hurt, she added, voice trembling. But we can fix this. We've come too far to let everything fall apart. Victor finally looked at her. You didn't just break my heart, Grace. You made me raise another man's son without giving me a choice. You had 13 years to tell me. I was afraid, she whispered. I trusted you, he said coldly. That trust is gone. Downstairs, Nathan stood at the top of the stairs, unseen. He'd heard everything. His heart pounded. He couldn't understand it fully, But one thing was clear. His life was no longer what he thought it was. His father was leaving, and it had something to do with him. The next morning, Grace knocked on Nathan's door. "Breakfast is ready." No answer. She opened the door and found him sitting on the floor, legs crossed, earphones in, face hard. "Nate, please eat something." He looked up. "You lied to Dad." Grace froze. "You heard us." "I heard everything," he said. "Is it true?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Nathan, is it true?" he snapped. She nodded. He stood up, fists clenched. "So Dad's not even my real father?" "He is," she said quickly. "He raised you. He loved you. He's more of a father than anyone. But he's not my blood." Grace reached for him, but he pulled away. "You ruined everything." Later that day, Victor was staying in a hotel across town. Despite the chaos, he made time to pick Nathan up from school. Nathan walked to the car without smiling. He threw his bag into the back seat. "You okay, champ?" Victor asked gently. Nathan stared straight ahead. "Why didn't you tell me?" Victor sighed. "Because I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to figure things out first." "So it's true?" Nathan asked. Victor nodded. "Yeah. Are you going to leave me too?" Victor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Never. I may not be your biological father, but I'm still your dad. By choice. And that means everything to me." Nathan didn't respond, but a tear ran down his cheek. That night, Grace sat alone in the living room when her phone rang. Chris Raymond. Her hand shook as she answered. "Hello." "I heard," Chris said. "Everything." You did." "Rita told me," he said coldly. She felt I had the right to know. Grace closed her eyes. "Chris, is he mine?" She hesitated. "Yes." Silence. "I want to see him," Chris said. Grace's heart sank. "Please don't do this." "He's my son," Chris snapped. "You kept him from me for 13 years. I'm not staying away anymore." The following week, Victor filed for legal separation. He couldn't bring himself to file for full divorce, at least not yet. But he couldn't sleep under the same roof either. When Grace begged him to forgive her, he said only one thing. "I forgave you, but I can't trust you." That's something forgiveness doesn't always fix. A month passed. Chris filed for joint custody of Nathan. Grace was furious. "You've never even been in his life." Chris stood across from her in court-mandated mediation. "Because I didn't know he was mine." Victor, sitting silently, looked between them both. He hated every minute of this. Grace turned to Victor, desperate. "Say something. You've raised him. You know Chris doesn't deserve to walk in after all this time." Victor finally spoke. "Nathan's old enough to choose." Outside court, the media had caught wind of the case, thanks to a leaked social media video. A short clip of Victor emotionally describing how he raised a child that wasn't biologically his went viral. "I changed his diapers. I taught him how to ride a bike. I was there every single day. So don't tell me I'm not his father because of one DNA test." The video hit over 4 million views in 2 days. The internet exploded. Hashtag Team Victor trended worldwide. Being a father is about love, not DNA. Grace is foul for what she did. Chris should stay away. Victor is a real man. Full respect. Some supported Chris. Every man deserves to know his blood. It's not fair to deny Chris his son. At home, Nathan stared at his phone, watching comment after comment roll in. He looked at Victor beside him. "They're calling you a hero." Victor smiled sadly. "I'm not a hero. I just did what any good man would do." Nathan leaned his head against Victor's shoulder. "I still want you to be my dad." Victor hugged him tightly. "You don't have to say that, son." "I mean it," Nathan said. "I don't care about DNA." Courtroom. Custody hearing begins. The courtroom was tense. Chris stood in his suit, looking confident. Victor sat calmly beside his lawyer. Grace was shaking with nerves. The judge spoke. "Mr. Chris Raymond is petitioning for joint custody of Nathan Harris, age 13, whose biological paternity was recently confirmed." The lawyers took turns presenting arguments. Chris's lawyer spoke with force. Mr. Raymond was denied the chance to be a father. Now he seeks to be part of his child's life. Grace's lawyer snapped back. He was absent for 13 years. Nathan doesn't even know him. Victor's lawyer added quietly. And Mr. Harris, though not the biological father, has been this child's only dad since birth. The turning point. The judge looked at Nathan. Son, do you want to speak? Nathan nodded and stepped forward. He cleared his throat. I know Chris is my real dad, by blood, but Victor is my real dad in every other way. He was there when I cried, when I was scared, when I was sick. He never made me feel like I didn't belong. He paused. And I don't want to live with a stranger. I want to stay with my dad. Victor. Gasps echoed through courtroom. Even Chris looked stunned. The judge nodded. Thank you, Nathan. Outside the court, reporters swarmed Victor and Nathan. Sir, how do you feel? Victor smiled faintly. I feel proud. Not because I won, but because my son chose love. Grace stood in the background, watching them, tears streaming down her cheeks. Chris stood silently, hands in pockets, then turned and walked away. 6 months later, things were different. Victor and Nathan lived in a smaller home now, quiet, peaceful, filled with books and love. On the wall hung a new photo, the two of them at Nathan's school award night, smiling side by side. One afternoon, they stood together in a lawyer's office. The lawyer, Mr. Adebayo, smiled and handed Victor a folder. It's official, he said. Nathan Harris is now legally your adopted son. Nathan looked up at Victor. You already were my dad. This just makes it law. Victor chuckled, blinking back tears. Still feels pretty good to hear it. They shook hands with the lawyer and left the building, walking into the sunshine like it was a new beginning. Because it was. Grace's new life. Grace moved to another city. She rented a small apartment and started working at a local NGO focused on women's empowerment and family healing. She didn't date. She didn't rush anything. She wrote letters to Nathan often. Some she sent, some she kept. Every now and then, Nathan replied. Short but honest. He was still healing. So was she. Chris tries again. One Saturday, Victor received an unexpected call. Victor, Chris said, his voice awkward. I was hoping to talk to Nathan. Victor was quiet for a moment. He's here, but I'm not sure he's ready. Can I at least try? Victor looked across the room where Nathan was working on a school project. He handed the phone over. It's Chris. Nathan looked at the screen, then took the phone slowly. Hello? Hey, it's Chris. I just wanted to say hi, and maybe see you sometime. Nathan was quiet. Then he said calmly, I don't think I'm ready yet, but thanks for calling. He handed the phone back to Victor and walked upstairs. Victor listened to the silence on the other end. Chris sighed. Maybe one day. Maybe, Victor replied. But that will be Nathan's choice. Always. A year later, TEDx talk. A stage. A red dot in the center. An eager crowd. Victor stepped up to the microphone in a fitted suit, his face calm but passionate. On the screen behind him appeared a photo of Nathan as a baby, being held in his arms. He began, When you hear the word father, you might think of DNA, blood, biology. But let me tell you what it really means. Fatherhood is not biology. It's being the one who stays, the one who teaches, protects, sacrifices, and shows up even when it's hard. 13 years into fatherhood, I found out that my son wasn't mine by blood. That moment broke something in me, but it also revealed something beautiful. Love doesn't come from genes. It comes from choice. And I chose to stay. The audience was silent, hanging on his every word. My son chose me back, not because I'm perfect, but because I showed up. That's what fatherhood is, showing up every single day. The crowd erupted in applause. Victor stepped off the stage into the arms of Nathan, now taller, stronger, smiling with pride. You killed it, Dad, Nathan said. Victor laughed. Thanks, son. Final scene. The sun set over the city as Victor and Nathan walked home, sharing a quiet moment. So, Nathan asked, "What's next?" Victor smiled. "Whatever we want. We've already survived the worst." Nathan nodded. "Then maybe now we can live the best." Victor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Exactly." And together, they walked on, not by blood but by bond.